He woke up before sunrise, as he had done for most of his life. The house was quiet, too quiet for a place that once held laughter, noise, and endless movement. The walls still carried old family photos, but the people in them had long stopped coming around. He moved slowly from his bed, careful with his knees, and made his way to the kitchen. The kettle whistled softly as he stared out the window, watching the early morning light touch the empty street. This was his routine now. Wake up early, make tea, sit alone, think about the past. He had raised his children in this very house. He worked long hours, skipped vacations, and gave up comforts so they could have better lives. He remembered school mornings, packed lunches, scraped knees, and late-night talks. Back then, the house felt alive. Now, days passed without a single phone call. His children were grown. They had families, careers, and busy lives. At least, that was what they always said when he asked why they never visited. Sometimes they came during holidays, but only for a short while. Most of the time, they called only when they needed help. Money, favors, signatures. He never said no. He never complained. He told himself this was part of being a parent, even when the children were no longer children. That morning, he had an appointment at a nearby care center. He volunteered there twice a week, helping with small tasks, fixing broken chairs, reading to children who stayed longer than expected. The place was meant to be temporary, but many children remained for years. He never asked too many questions. He simply showed up. The walk there took longer these days. His steps were slower, his breath shorter. Still, he enjoyed the walk. It gave him a reason to leave the house. When he arrived, the familiar sounds greeted him. Soft voices, footsteps, a distant laugh, the smell of simple food. As he helped arrange books on a shelf, he noticed a young girl sitting alone in the corner of the room. She was quiet, watching the others from a distance. While most children moved around, laughed, or asked for attention, she stayed still, holding her hands together in her lap. Her eyes were alert, but tired, as if she had learned early not to expect too much. He did not approach her right away. He had learned not to rush children. Instead, he sat nearby and began fixing a loose table leg. Minutes passed. She glanced at him once, then looked away. After a while, he gently pushed a small wooden block across the floor toward her. It stopped near her feet. She looked at the block, then at him. He smiled softly, not forcing anything. Slowly, she picked it up and pushed it back. That was all. No words. Just a simple moment. But something about it stayed with him. Over the next few weeks, he noticed her often. She was always there, always quiet. Other children came and went, but she remained. He learned small things without asking directly. She had been passed over many times. People showed interest, then changed their minds. Some said she was too quiet. Others said she was too old. Some never said a reason at all. One afternoon, he brought her a book with pictures and simple words. He sat beside her and read aloud. She listened carefully. When he finished, she asked a question in a soft voice. It surprised him. Her voice was gentle but clear. From that moment, she began to speak more, but only to him. He started thinking about her when he was at home. He wondered if she ate enough, if she slept well, if she felt safe. The thoughts came uninvited, but they stayed. One night, as he sat alone at the kitchen table, he realized the truth he had been avoiding. The emptiness in his house was not just loneliness. It was the absence of purpose. The idea formed slowly, then all at once. At first, he pushed it away. He told himself he was too old, too tired, too alone. But the thought kept returning. He imagined her laughter filling the quiet rooms. He imagined cooking for two instead of one. He imagined walking her to school, helping with homework, listening to her stories. He spoke to the people at the center. They were surprised but cautious. They asked questions about his health, his finances, his support system. He answered honestly. He had enough. Not much, but enough. More importantly, he had time, patience, and love. The process was not easy. There were forms, interviews, home visits, During one visit, a worker looked around the house and asked if his family supported his decision. He hesitated. Then he said yes, because he wanted it to be true. When the time came to tell his children, he invited them over. It took weeks to get them all in one place. When they finally sat around the same table, he felt nervous in a way he had not felt in years. He cleared his throat and told them calmly that he planned to adopt a young girl from the care center. The silence that followed was heavy. One of them laughed, thinking it was a joke. Another frowned. Then the questions came, sharp and fast. Why would you do this? Are you serious? Do you know how this looks? At your age, alone? He tried to explain. He spoke about loneliness, about purpose, about giving a child a home, but they were not listening. Their faces showed embarrassment, fear, and something darker that he did not want to name. One of them said it would bring shame. Another said people would talk. A third asked if he had lost his mind. Then came the ultimatum. If he went through with it, they said they would step away. They would not explain his choices to others. They would not be part of it. They wanted him to choose. He looked at their faces and realized something painful. They were no longer asking as his children. They were demanding as strangers. He did not raise his voice. He did not argue. He simply said he had already made his choice. They left angry. Doors closed harder than necessary. The house returned to silence, but this time it felt different. He sat alone at the table long after they were gone. His hands shook, but his heart felt steady. For the first time in years, he had chosen something not out of guilt, but out of love. That night he walked through the house slowly, touching the walls, the door frames, the old furniture. He imagined a small pair of shoes by the door, a backpack on the chair, a voice calling his name. He knew the road ahead would not be easy. He knew people would judge. He knew he might face this without his family. Still, as he turned off the lights and went to bed, the house did not feel empty anymore. It felt like it was waiting after the argument with his children. The grandfather knew that life would change in ways he could not yet imagine. The house felt heavier than ever before. Every corner, every piece of furniture seemed to echo the absence of those who had once filled it. But in that heaviness there was also a quiet determination. He had made his choice, and he would not waver. The next morning, he returned to the care center. The girl was there, sitting quietly at the edge of a small play area, her eyes fixed on a drawing she had been coloring. When she noticed him, a small, cautious smile appeared on her face. It was the first time in weeks he saw a genuine flicker of trust. He sat beside her, carrying a small bag with a few gifts, nothing extravagant, just pencils, a notebook, and a simple stuffed toy. He handed them to her gently. She accepted them slowly, studying each item, then glanced at him as if asking silently if it was real. Days turned into weeks, and he started spending more time at the center. Each visit, he learned a little more about her. Her name, the small habits she had picked up from the other children, the way she flinched when someone raised their voice. He listened carefully. He never rushed her. He let her open up in her own time. She began to share small bits of her life memories of a foster home that had not been kind, a favorite book she kept hidden under her pillow, the dream of owning a pet. She spoke softly, but he listened as if every word mattered, because it did. When he returned home after these visits, he began preparing his house. Rooms that had been empty were dusted, walls cleaned, and furniture rearranged. He did not know exactly how to prepare for a child who had never felt fully safe, but he tried to make the space warm, welcoming, and safe. He added little touches he thought she would like: a small bookshelf, a bright blanket on the sofa, and a little corner with toys and drawing supplies Todd his own life was adjusting to. He had lived alone for years, and habits that once seemed comforting now felt too rigid. He started cooking meals he hadn't prepared in years. He tried new recipes, hoping she would enjoy them. He moved slowly, carefully, and with a focus on creating an atmosphere of comfort. It was not easy, and many nights he went to bed exhausted, thinking about whether he was doing enough. When the official adoption papers came through, it felt surreal. A social worker visited his home, inspecting every room, inspecting questions about his daily routine, and evaluating whether he could provide a stable environment. The grandfather answered honestly. He admitted that he was old, that he had challenges, but he emphasized the love he could give and the stability he offered. After weeks of waiting, the approval came. He could officially bring her home. The day he arrived to take her home, she clutched a small backpack containing her few personal belongings. Her eyes were wide, not with excitement, but with caution. She had been moved from home to home so many times that trust had become a fragile thing. The grandfather knelt down to her level, spoke softly, and reassured her that this time she could stay, that she was safe now. Slowly, she nodded. The first week at home was quiet and tense. She explored the house carefully, touching objects with curiosity and caution. Meals were silent, except for the sounds of eating. He did not push conversation. He let her take the lead. At night, he placed a small nightlight in her room, making sure she felt secure. He checked on her several times, not wanting to intrude but wanting to make sure she was comfortable. Outside, the neighborhood was familiar to him but new to her. The grandfather began walking her to the park, pointing out small things along the way: flowers, birds, and people in the community. At first, she held tightly to his hand, not speaking. Sometimes she would look around nervously, as if expecting someone to take her away. He remained patient, reminding her that she could take her time. He told her she did not have to rush into trust. It would come naturally as days passed. Small moments of connection began to emerge. A laugh when he told a simple joke. A shy smile when she found a drawing she liked in a book. A quiet conversation over a shared meal. Each small step was a victory. He celebrated them in his own quiet way, feeling hope growing stronger than he had felt in years. But the absence of his children weighed on him. They had not come back to visit, nor had they called. When the topic came to mind, he felt a mix of sadness and resolve. Their absence was painful, but it also freed him to focus entirely on her. He realized that family was not only those who shared his blood, but those who were willing to be present, to love, to stay. The girl began to adjust, slowly opening up to him in his home. She drew pictures and hung them on the walls, showing pride in her new space. She spoke more, asking questions about the grandfather's life, about the world outside, about small, everyday things. He answered with honesty, never rushing, never lecturing, letting her curiosity lead. Outside the house, neighbors whispered. Some were supportive, some were judgmental. He ignored the judgment, focusing instead on creating an environment of love and respect. He taught her daily routines, helped with homework, and listened without interruption. He became her anchor, the person who stayed when everything else seemed uncertain. Months passed. The girl, once so quiet and wary, began to bloom. She smiled openly, laughed with ease, and began to speak about dreams and plans. The grandfather noticed subtle changes the way she held herself, the confidence in her voice, the small gestures of affection she offered him. His home felt alive again, filled with warmth, laughter, and love that had been missing for years. He realized that the challenges were far from over. There would be struggles, setbacks, and difficult moments. But he also knew that this bond, built on trust, patience, and unwavering love, would carry them through. In a house that had once felt empty, a new life was beginning. A life shaped not by absence and judgment, but by choice, compassion, and the courage to do what was right. Even when others abandoned him, life continued in the small house, now shared by two lives that slowly began to weave together. The girl, once quiet and cautious, had started to open up, but the world outside was not always kind. School was a place of learning, but also a place where she felt the weight of differences. Other children whispered, stared, and sometimes left her out of games. The grandfather noticed her hesitation and the way she pulled back after each interaction. He never dismissed it. He never told her to just ignore people. Instead, he listened, asked gently what had happened, and helped her understand that not everyone would be welcoming, but that she did not have to shrink herself for them. He walked her to school each morning. Taking the same quiet streets he had known for years, he taught her to notice small acts of kindness, a neighbor waving, a teacher offering help, a classmate sharing a pencil. He emphasized that kindness existed, even if it was sometimes hard to see. He reminded her that she could choose to carry strength and patience, even when others did not understand or accept her. The lessons were not in grand speeches, but in the quiet daily walks, soft conversations, the encouragement that never demanded perfection. At home, they settled into routines. Mornings were for breakfast and preparing for school. Afternoons were for homework and small chores, sometimes with music playing softly in the background. Evenings were for shared meals, sometimes accompanied by stories from his past. He told her about his own childhood, about struggles and lessons learned. She listened with curiosity, occasionally asking questions about his experiences and the world he had known. These stories became a bridge between their lives, connecting the past to the present, showing her that life was full of challenges, but also resilience. She began to trust him in small ways. She would ask for his opinion on a drawing, share a secret she had never told anyone else, or ask for a bedtime story. He listened with patience, never interrupting, never judging. Each act of trust strengthened the bond between them. He realized that love was not only in providing material things, but in showing consistency, patience, and respect. Outside influences were not always easy. Some neighbors watched them with suspicion. Some whispered that an old man should not be raising a young child alone. The grandfather ignored the comments, focusing instead on creating an environment of love, safety, and stability. He taught her that the opinions of others did not define her worth. In quiet moments, he reminded her that the people who mattered were those who stayed, who supported, and who loved. At school, the girl faced moments of subtle discrimination. A classmate might exclude her from a game. A teacher might assume less from her, or a passing comment might make her feel out of place. Each time, she returned home with heavy shoulders, and he was there to meet her. They would sit together, sometimes in silence, sometimes talking about what had happened. He guided her gently, helping her see that her identity was not a weakness, but a source of strength. He taught her that she could respond with dignity and pride, without letting anger control her. Health challenges also began to appear for the grandfather. Years of work and neglecting his own needs caught up with him. He had aches and pains, but he did not complain in front of her. He wanted to remain strong for her. Still, she noticed small signs: a slower step, a hand on his chest after climbing stairs, or a pause during a long conversation. She asked once if he was tired. He smiled and said he was fine, but she pressed gently. She was learning to care as much as he cared for her. Slowly, their relationship deepened beyond caretaker and child. They became companions in the truest sense. They shared simple joys, baking cookies and burning a few, laughing at the mishap, planting small flowers in the backyard and watching them bloom, watching old movies and sharing opinions on the characters. Each moment was a thread weaving their lives together. The grandfather noticed her, personality beginning to emerge more clearly. She began to speak up in class, offer her own ideas, and take small risks she would have avoided before. He encouraged her curiosity, praised her effort, and celebrated her successes. He knew the world outside was often unfair, but he wanted her to face it with confidence, understanding that her value did not come from approval, but from her own integrity and courage. Sometimes the past would return. She would speak about memories of previous homes or foster families, sometimes with sadness, sometimes with confusion. He listened patiently, never rushing her to forget, but helping her see that she had a safe place now. He acknowledged the hurt and disappointment, but always reinforced the reality of love and stability she could count on. Their evenings often became moments of reflection. They would sit together in the living room after dinner, sometimes reading, sometimes talking quietly. He shared life lessons not as commands, but as observations. He spoke of resilience, the importance of empathy, the value of patience, and the strength of kindness. She absorbed these lessons, sometimes asking questions, sometimes simply listening, internalizing the guidance in her own time. The house, once quiet and lonely, was now filled with life, albeit different from the laughter of grandchildren or the bustle of adult children. There was a rhythm, a gentle harmony in the routine of shared responsibilities and shared love. Even the small victories finishing a difficult homework assignment, making a new friend at school, learning a new skill, were celebrated together. Despite all the challenges, the grandfather never doubted his choice. He understood that love was sometimes tested in quiet, invisible ways. The absence of his children, the judgment of neighbors, the challenges at school were part of a larger story. He focused on what he could control, providing care, safety, and guidance for a child who had been overlooked too many times. Months turned into years. The girl grew taller, more confident, and increasingly aware of her surroundings. She still faced difficulties, moments of self-doubt and external judgment. But she had a foundation built on unwavering support. The grandfather watched her, feeling pride that was quiet but deep. He realized that his life, once defined by the absence of his family, found a new purpose, a renewed meaning in guiding and nurturing her. In the quiet of the evenings, he sometimes thought about the family who had left. There was sadness, yes, but also clarity. Love was not guaranteed by blood or proximity. It was shown by presence, commitment, and care. He had found a family in this young girl. And together they were building a life that was richer, deeper, and more meaningful than he could have imagined alone. Every challenge they faced together strengthened their bond. Every moment of laughter, every shared meal, every quiet conversation reinforced the truth he had come to know, that family was not defined by those who walked away, but by those who chose to stay, to nurture, and to love without condition. In her, he saw resilience. In him, she found safety. Together, they navigated a world that was often unfair, proving that love could heal, sustain, and transform lives in ways no one could predict. As the years passed, the girl grew into a confident young woman. The small steps of courage, trust, and resilience she had taken over the past years had shaped her into someone who carried herself with quiet pride. She excelled in school, showing not only intelligence but also kindness and empathy that reflected the lessons her grandfather had patiently taught her. Every achievement was celebrated, every challenge met with determination, and he stood beside her through it all, the grandfather. Now, older and more fragile, watched her grow with a mix of pride and concern. He had devoted years to raising her, guiding her, and protecting her from the world's harshness. His health had begun to show more signs of wear aches that lingered, tiredness that came faster than before, but he never let it interfere with his care for her. He wanted to be there, fully present. As she moved closer to the life she had always dreamed of, as news of her accomplishments reached others, including his estranged children, the dynamic began to shift in ways he had never anticipated. One day, a letter arrived, thin but heavy with significance. It was from one of his children. Reaching out after hearing about the girl's success in a local competition and her recent scholarship, the letter was carefully worded, full of cautious admiration and, beneath it all, regret. The tone suggested an attempt to reconnect without acknowledging the past hurt they had caused. He read the letter quietly, not showing his emotions. Later, he handed it to her. She looked at the envelope, curious, then at him. He nodded, encouraging honesty. She opened it, scanning the words carefully. Her expression shifted from curiosity to surprise, and then a faint anger. She had expected distance or silence, not sudden attention. After a long pause, she looked up at him. Seeking guidance, he explained gently that sometimes people realize the mistakes they have made too late, and that while it was understandable to feel upset, it was important to decide how to respond. He told her that forgiveness was a personal choice, not a requirement, and that she had the right to protect her own heart. She nodded, understanding that her life and the choices she had made mattered more than the sudden interest of those who had abandoned them. Despite the renewed contact from his children, he focused on the present. They had built a life together, one of love, trust, and mutual respect. The girl was thriving, and he took pride in knowing he had been part of that journey. They continued their routines, with small celebrations of daily victories, laughter over shared meals, and quiet evenings discussing dreams and ambitions. The girl had aspirations beyond what the grandfather had imagined in the early days, She wanted to attend university, pursue a career that would allow her to help others and make a difference in her community. He encouraged her every step of the way, offering advice, support, and the wisdom of his own experiences. They navigated applications, interviews, and preparations together, celebrating each acceptance and each success along the way. During this time, the estranged children made more attempts to reconnect. They visited unannounced, sent gifts, and called frequently, trying to insert themselves into a life they had once abandoned. The grandfather responded with quiet dignity, welcoming them politely, but not allowing them to disrupt the bond he had built with the girl. He observed her reactions carefully, letting her lead in how to respond. She often chose to maintain distance, protecting the relationship that had been nurtured through years of care and devotion. Outside the walls of their home, the community began to notice the transformation in both of them. The girl's confidence, intelligence, and kindness became evident to teachers, neighbors, and friends. People who had once whispered now offered smiles, congratulations, and admiration. The grandfather, too, was respected, not only for his dedication, but for the integrity and patience he had shown over the years. His actions spoke louder than words. He had chosen love over judgment, perseverance over despair. Together they faced challenges that were new and different. Scholarships, exams, applications, and social pressures tested them in ways that were unfamiliar. But they approached each obstacle as a team, leaning on trust and the lessons learned from years of shared experience. Every setback was met with discussion and problem-solving. Every success with quiet celebration. The grandfather's health, however, became an ever-present concern. He had slowed considerably, and small ailments began to accumulate. Visits to the doctor became more frequent, medications more numerous, yet he never allowed his limitations to define the time he spent with her. Each moment was precious, and he prioritized experiences that would leave lasting memories. They cooked together, shared stories of old family traditions, planted flowers in the backyard, and walked through familiar streets talking about hopes for the future. The girl, in turn, grew increasingly aware of the responsibility and care she had received. She often reminded him to rest, offered to cook meals, or simply stayed by his side during his more difficult days. She had learned empathy, patience, and dedication not just from words, but from the example of someone who had devoted himself fully to her well-being. Then came a pivotal moment. The girl received news of an opportunity to attend a prestigious university in a distant city. It was a chance she could not ignore, a dream realized through her hard work and resilience. Excitement mingled with anxiety. She wanted to pursue her future, but also feared the changes it would bring to their life together. The grandfather, sensing her hesitation, reassured her that growth sometimes required stepping into the unknown. He reminded her that the bond they shared would remain strong, even across distances, and that he was proud of the independent, capable young woman she had become, packing for the move. They spent days sorting through belongings, choosing what to take, what to leave, and what to remember. The house, once quiet and empty, had been transformed into a home filled with memories, laughter, and love. Every item carried a story, every corner a testament to their journey. She paused often, touching walls, looking at photographs, remembering how far they had come together. On the day she left, there were tears and hugs, promises to visit and words of encouragement. The grandfather watched her board the bus with a heart both heavy and full. He knew that this step was essential for her growth. Just as he had known years before that taking her in was essential for his own renewal, they had given each other a life that neither could have imagined alone. As the bus disappeared from view, he returned to the house, walking through each room with careful attention. He understood that life would continue to present challenges, but the foundation they had built would endure. The absence of his children, who had once abandoned him over a decision made out of love, now seemed less significant in comparison to the family he had chosen and nurtured. The days turned into weeks, and news of her success at university began to reach him. Letters, calls, and messages told stories of achievements, friendships, and experiences. Each update was a testament to the power of perseverance, trust, and love. The grandfather, though aging and slower, found joy in every milestone, knowing that the sacrifices and decisions of the past had led to this moment. When his estranged children attempted contact again, he handled it with careful balance. They were polite, but he made it clear that the life he had built with her was sacred and would not be disrupted. He welcomed them in principle, but they could not undo the years of absence or overshadow the love that had been cultivated through patience and dedication. His priority was, and always would be, the young woman who had become his family in every meaningful sense. In quiet moments, he reflected on their journey. From a house once empty and cold to a home alive with trust and warmth, the path had been difficult, filled with challenges, setbacks, and moments of doubt. Yet through unwavering love and commitment, they had built something enduring. They had proven that family was not defined by blood alone, but by presence, care, and the courage to stand by one another. Even as life continued with new challenges, the grandfather felt a deep sense of fulfillment. He had faced abandonment and judgment, yet through love and perseverance, he had created a family stronger than any he had known before. The bond with the girl had redefined what it meant to be family, showing that love chosen freely could heal, sustain, and transform lives in ways that obligations and expectations never could. Time continued its steady march, and the grandfather's health gradually declined. He had spent years building a life filled with love and patience, but age began to weigh heavily. His steps slowed, his voice softened, and tasks that had once been simple became more challenging. Yet through it all, his dedication to the young woman he had adopted never wavered. She, in turn, had grown into a capable, thoughtful, and resilient young adult, prepared to care for him as he had cared for her. Their daily life became a careful balance of routine and adaptation. Mornings started with quiet breakfasts, shared gently over conversation. She would help with small chores, reminding him to rest when needed, and he would offer guidance, stories, and encouragement, keeping their connection strong. Even in his frailty, he maintained an active role in her life, providing wisdom, perspective, and the unwavering presence she had come to rely on. The relationship with his estranged children remained distant but complicated. They occasionally called, sometimes visited, often expressing regret or curiosity about the girl's accomplishments. Each interaction reminded him of their earlier abandonment, and he maintained his boundaries with calm firmness. He allowed the girl to make her own decisions regarding them, providing advice without imposing judgment. Through this, she learned that trust and respect were earned, not demanded, and that protection of the heart was as important as generosity. As the girl prepared to move on to the next stage of her life, college, career opportunities, and independence, the grandfather recognized the bittersweet nature of this transition. He felt pride and joy in her accomplishments, but also a sense of loss. Their bond had been forged over years of shared growth and reliance, and the thought of physical distance weighed heavily on both of them. Still, he encouraged her to pursue her dreams, knowing that love sometimes meant letting go. Even in small ways, days became a mixture of routine and reflection. They continued their evening talks, sharing stories, hopes, and quiet laughter. The grandfather's presence remained a steady anchor in her life, a source of wisdom and comfort. She, in turn, offered care and attention, learning from his example the value of patience, empathy, and consistency. Each moment together reinforced the lessons they had taught each other, that love was an action, a choice, and a commitment, not merely words or sentiment. As the grandfather's health deteriorated further, the girl took on more responsibility. She prepared meals, assisted with medications, and provided companionship throughout the day. Their home, which had once felt empty and quiet, continued to be filled with warmth, laughter, and care, even as he grew weaker. The bond they shared became a source of strength, not just for him, but for her. As she navigated the challenges of growing up with both independence and responsibility in the final months of his life, the grandfather reflected on the journey they had shared. He thought about the decision to adopt a child that had been rejected by others, about the estrangement from his own family, and about the love that had grown in its place. He realized that the choice to love unconditionally, to stay committed despite judgment and abandonment, had transformed both their lives. It had given him purpose, given her safety, and created a family defined not by blood, but by devotion and care. One quiet evening, as they sat together on the porch watching the sunset, he spoke gently to her. He reminded her of the challenges they had faced, the obstacles overcome, and the love that had sustained them through difficult times. He encouraged her to continue living fully, embracing opportunities, and sharing kindness with the world. He told her that the lessons they had learned together, resilience, compassion, patience, and courage were tools she could carry into her future. She listened carefully, feeling the weight of his words and the depth of his love. Tears came quietly, as they often did in moments of honesty and reflection. She thanked him for his guidance, for his patience, and for the unwavering support he had provided. She acknowledged the sacrifices he had made, and she promised to honor the bond they shared through her actions and her life. His final days were spent surrounded by the quiet, routines and small joys they had cultivated together. Simple acts, holding hands, sharing meals, watching old movies, reading stories, became profound expressions of love. He found comfort in her presence, knowing that the life they had built together was secure, meaningful, and enduring. When he passed, the house was filled not with emptiness, but with memories, love, and the echoes of a life lived with integrity and devotion. The girl, now fully grown, honored his legacy by continuing the values he had instilled: kindness, patience, empathy, and courage. She remembered the lessons of resilience and trust, and she carried forward the example of unconditional love he had shown. The estranged children arrived too late. Confronted with the consequences of their earlier choices, they saw a life that had flourished without their support, a bond that could not be undone, and a young woman whose strength and character had been nurtured by someone they had abandoned. Their regret, though real, could not replace the years of care and commitment that had defined her upbringing. In the end, the story was clear. Family was not merely those who shared blood, but those who chose to stay, to nurture, and to love. The grandfather had proven that one courageous act of love, taken against judgment and expectation, could change lives, redefine family, and create a legacy that would endure far beyond his years. The girl, shaped by his guidance and care, would carry his lessons into her future, a living testament to the power of chosen love and the strength it brings through their journey. They had both learned that love was not always easy, and that those who abandon or judge could not diminish the bond created by patience, trust, and commitment. In a world often marked by absence and disappointment, they had built something rare and enduring, a family defined by love, strengthened through challenge, and remembered for generations to come, even after the grandfather had passed. The impact of his love and choices continued to shape the young woman's life. The house that had once been a quiet, lonely space remained filled with memories of their time together. Every corner told a story: the small bookshelf with worn pages, the little drawing pinned to the wall, the garden they had planted and nurtured together. It was a home that carried lessons, love, the enduring presence of someone who had devoted his life to her well-being. She moved through the house carefully, touching familiar objects with a sense of reverence. Memories flooded her mind: morning walks to school, shared meals, evenings spent reading or talking about the day. She remembered the moments when he had guided her through challenges, offered comfort when the world felt harsh, and celebrated her small victories as if they were monumental achievements. These recollections were bittersweet, bringing both tears and gratitude with his absence. The girl realized that the responsibility to carry forward his lessons rested on her shoulders. She reflected on the love and patience he had given, the unwavering support that had shaped her confidence and resilience, and the courage he had shown in choosing her when others had abandoned her. She felt a deep sense of duty to honor him by living a life that reflected the values he had instilled. The community around her continued to recognize her strength and character. Teachers, neighbors, and friends noticed her dedication, compassion, and determination. She excelled academically and socially, not simply for personal gain, but as a reflection of the upbringing she had received. Each success reminded her of the grandfather's words that integrity, kindness, and perseverance were more important than external approval or recognition. She pursued her education with focus and determination, often recalling the quiet encouragements he had given her. Late nights spent studying, preparing for exams, and writing essays became moments of connection with him in memory, imagining him sitting beside her, offering advice, or simply nodding in support. His lessons about patience, resilience, and empathy guided her decisions, and she felt his influence in every thoughtful action she took in the years following his death. The estranged children occasionally reached out again. They called, sent messages, and tried to re-establish contact, perhaps hoping to reconnect with both him and the young woman. She handled these interactions with the grace and wisdom she had learned from the grandfather. She listened politely, responded calmly, but maintained boundaries. She understood that their previous absence had consequences. And while forgiveness was possible, it did not erase the years of abandonment or diminish the life she had built. She also became a source of inspiration for others. Friends, classmates, and neighbors admired not only her achievements, but the depth of her character. She shared her experiences and the lessons she had learned, emphasizing the importance of patience, resilience, and the power of love and chosen family. People began to understand that true family was not solely defined by blood, but by the consistent presence and care of those who choose to stand by you professionally. She sought opportunities to help others, inspired by the care she had received. She became involved in community projects, mentorship programs, and volunteer work, often focusing on children who had experienced rejection or abandonment. She carried forward the grandfather's example, understanding that one act of love could change the course of a life. She nurtured others with the same patience, attention, and kindness that had been given to her, even as her life became busier with responsibilities, ambitions, and relationships. She held the memories of the grandfather close. Simple rituals, lighting a candle on certain dates, tending to the garden they had planted together, revisiting the small bookshelf of their shared books, kept his memory alive. These acts were not merely sentimental. They were reminders of the values he had instilled and the life lessons that continued to guide her. The house, though quieter than it had been in its prime, remained a symbol of resilience, love, and the transformative power of choice. Each object, photograph, and corner of the home spoke of a journey that had begun with courage and compassion. The young woman often reflected on the decision the grandfather had made, realizing how one courageous choice had set into motion years of growth, love, and stability that no absence or hardship could undo. In her personal life, she formed friendships and connections built on mutual respect, understanding, and empathy. She approached relationships with a sense of caution and awareness, remembering the lessons learned from the past, but also with an openness to love and trust. The grandfather's example showed her that meaningful bonds required time, patience, and dedication, and she carried these principles into every interaction. She also pursued opportunities to share her story, hoping to inspire others who faced challenges, rejection, or abandonment. Her experiences became a beacon for those who felt unseen or undervalued, demonstrating that resilience, love, and care could create new paths even when previous support had failed. Through storytelling, mentoring, and advocacy, she honored the grandfather's legacy, ensuring that his lessons reached beyond their home. As time continued, the young woman achieved milestones that reflected both her talents and the nurturing guidance she had received. Academic awards, community recognition, and professional accomplishments were celebrated. But she measured her success not only by these external markers, but by the integrity, empathy, and strength she carried within. Each decision, each act of kindness, and each thoughtful choice was a testament to the grandfather's influence and the foundation he had helped her build. Even as she navigated adulthood, challenges persisted. Life presented obstacles, setbacks, and moments of doubt. But she faced each situation with the wisdom and resilience imparted by the grandfather. In her mind, she often imagined his quiet encouragement, the steady presence beside her, the lessons woven into daily life. This internal guidance became a source of confidence and courage, allowing her to navigate difficulties with grace. In the quiet moments, she reflected on the journey they had shared. She thought about the early days of fear and uncertainty, the gradual trust that had developed, and the deep bond that had transformed both their lives. She acknowledged the pain caused by the absence of the grandfather's biological children, understanding that their abandonment had, in a way, allowed a new family to form. Defined by intentional love and care, through this reflection, she came to understand a profound truth: the power of choice in creating a family, the strength found in love that is actively given, and the enduring impact of someone who commits fully to nurturing another. The grandfather's decision to adopt her, to stand by her, and to teach her patience, kindness, and courage had created ripples that extended far beyond the walls of their home. Years later, as she established her own life, she carried these lessons into the world. She became a mentor, a friend, and a leader, always guided by the values instilled in her. She helped children and young adults who faced rejection, loneliness, or uncertainty, showing them that one act of love, care, and attention could redefine their lives. In doing so, she ensured that the grandfather's legacy lived on, not only through memory, but through tangible actions and positive change. In the end, the story of their journey stood as a testament to the transformative power of love and choice. The young woman thrived not simply because she'd been cared for, but because she'd been nurtured with patience, consistency, and unwavering commitment. She understood that family was not determined by blood alone, but by the willingness to stay, to love, and to protect one another. The home remained, filled with the quiet echoes of laughter, lessons, and love. It stood as a symbol of a life lived with courage and compassion, a place where one man's decision had created a future full of hope, purpose, and resilience. Through her continued growth, contributions, and the lives she touched, grandfather's legacy endured, proving that love, when chosen and nurtured, can change lives forever.